Most people think that the relationship between church musicians and pastors is supposed to be a certain way. And it's this certain way that everybody thinks it should be that's causing the most drama and conflict. And it's one of the biggest reasons why a lot of church musicians get fired. So in this video, I'm going to tell you about this ideal relationship and show you a better way for church musicians to have a relationship with their pastors. So I used to go to this worship conference every year that was hosted by Israel Houghton and New Breed. And I went every year for like 7 or 8 years straight. And there were thousands of people there in attendance from around the world. Musicians and singers and church leaders and, bishops and all of these other high-titled church leaders and all of that gathered from around the world to come and share and learn from what was considered the biggest gospel group at the time. But one of the going themes at this conference every year was about the relationship between musicians and their pastors. You had lots and lots of musicians there every year that had these sort of contentious relationships with their pastors or leaders, and they wanted to know how to solve it. So you had all of these bishops and pastors and other high-titled church leaders from all over the world who echoed the exact same thing every time this subject came up, that the musician and the pastor should have like this really close relationship, and the musician should work to make the relationship that way. And then this is supposed to spill over into a more effective service and all of that kind of stuff. Now, this is nothing new. This is something that I've heard my whole career, and I'm sure you've heard 1,000 times too, but it's something that never really sat right with me. And I was always curious as to why it seemed like the musician had the bigger responsibility in creating and maintaining this relationship. Now, I'll tell you why this relationship is a bad idea and it's a huge problem in a second. But let me break down for you what this close relationship is supposed to look like and what I mean by it seems like the musician has the bigger responsibility. So as a church musician, you're supposed to hang out with your pastor. You're supposed to go fishing with your pastor and have lunch with him all of the time. And you're supposed to talk pretty much every day, or at least, 3, 4, 5 times a week. And you're supposed to be able to get into the pastor's mind and understand his or her thoughts and all of this kind of stuff. This is the kind of stuff they would tell you, right? And not only that, they would always talk about how it's basically the musician's responsibility to make all of the calls and ask the pastor to go fishing and take him to lunch and all of this kind of stuff. And it's taught that this is what dedicated church musicians are supposed to do. It's like basically you were supposed to have this like type of, well, I was about to say a Will and Jada relationship, but never mind that. But basically you're supposed to have this like really close and tight relationship. And on the surface, it sounds cool, right? It sounds really good. And it's something that people have taught forever. So it must be a good thing, right? No, no, no. Let me tell you why this is a bad idea and a huge problem, and then I'll tell you what is a much better relationship that musicians should have with a pastor. Now, right before we jump into that, if you're getting value out of this video so far, or if you've gotten value out of any of my videos here on the channel, do me a quick favor and hit the like button on this video. That helps out with all of the algorithms on YouTube and all of that kind of stuff. Okay, so imagine you as a grown adult being locked in a room with another grown adult that you don't know, and somebody locks you in that room and says, don't come out until you're friends. That is very much what it's like to be told as a church musician that you should have this sort of close relationship for the pastor of the church you play for. It's crazy because I may not be the type of person that even has close relationships like that. I may not enjoy going fishing or talking every day or going out to lunch. So the first reason this is a problem and a bad idea is because you can't force people to be close. It's really like being told to be friends with someone you don't know, and that just does not work for everyone. Now, also, this is a lot like those relationships that happen when a man and a woman are working together on a job and then they start dating. We all know that those kind of don't usually work out too well, right? Now, of course, it's not exactly the same because it's not a romantic relationship. At least I hope it's not. But it does have many of the same characteristics. And as soon as that close relationship goes sour, as soon as you as a musician don't show up for the pastor's daughter's debutante ball or their family Christmas party, you might as well start packing your bags because you're going to be on your way out the door and they're going to accuse you of being like not like-minded or something crazy like that. So the next reason that this is a bad idea is because it sets up a situation to where you are more friends than you are colleagues. And while being friends is cool and all, your primary responsibility there is to do a job. Now, this may be the most important reason why this is a bad idea, but there are musicians and pastors out there who have this sort of ideal relationship whose services don't get better because of it. Like the membership or anything like that has seemingly grown as a result of this type of relationship, or the offerings haven't gotten larger and tithing and all of that, nor, any of the sermons, like they are just dynamically better because of this type of relationship. And I don't even know how you would measure if something like that has gotten better as a result of a relationship or not, beyond some subjective stuff. Plus, there are musicians and pastors and stuff out there that don't have this sort of close relationship, who have very effective worship services and all of that, and their churches are growing. So the reason here that this is a problem and a bad idea is because this close relationship hasn't even been shown to work. Okay, so if this type of close relationship that's been taught for years is a really bad idea and a big problem, then what is a better relationship? What's a better way to have a relationship between a musician and a pastor? Well, I'll give you 3 characteristics of one. And the first one involves recognizing and showing regard for each other's worth. It involves understanding each other and valuing each other's opinions, even in those times where you don't agree. It's about the pastor giving the musician the autonomy and authority to lead those whom he or she is in charge of, and the space to express that authority. Yes, I'm talking to you pastors who like to micromanage musicians. So basically, this first characteristic that makes for a better relationship between the church musician and pastor is respect. When you have respect for each other, you don't need to talk every day and go fishing and all of that. The respect is going to fill any void that's there with all of those things. Now, the next characteristic is about being able to actively listen to each other and allowing each other the freedom to express views and issues with each other. Like, there's really no reason that a musician should fear going to their pastor and asking them for money or a budget to buy church instruments or music, or even for a raise. And there's also no reason that a pastor shouldn't be able to come to you as a musician and ask you for something pertaining to your job, or even give you feedback about something pertaining to the job you're doing. What I'm describing here, and this is the characteristic, is effective communication. And this also does not take a close relationship where you're going fishing and out to lunch and all of that. You can talk 2 or 3 times a month, or even 2 or 3 times every 6 months, and still have effective communication that works for the betterment of both of you and the job that you're doing. Now, this next characteristic is a really big one, and it's one that I think is probably the most important one out of the ones that I'm listing. And it involves being able to help each other navigate challenges and achieve goals. It's about giving encouragement and assistance to each other because you want to see each other succeed. It's about having each other's backs. So if you watch the show Suits on Netflix, which is one of the biggest shows in the world right now, you'll know that the characters Harvey and Jessica, they have each other's backs for the most part, sometimes in some strange ways, but they got each other's backs. You know that they're there to support each other. And this is what I mean by having each other's backs. So basically, this characteristic is having full support for each other. And the reason that I said that this one is probably the most important is because when you have that support in place, that close relationship that is usually forced and that we've been talking about this whole video, usually just kind of happens on its own. And even if this support doesn't take that relationship to the point to where you're talking every day and going fishing and going to lunch and all of that, it's going to be there to carry the relationship, and it's going to have an effect of having musicians stay at churches a lot longer because they feel more welcome there, and pastors aren't just like trying to fire them over everything that's really trivial. And it's also going to help with that situation I mentioned earlier where you have a lot of pastors who like to micromanage and just control musicians as puppets and be their voices and all of that. It's going to rid all of that. And a cool benefit of all 3 of these characteristics is that it's going to cut out a lot of that animosity, and it's going to help with this growing issue where a lot of these pastors are publicly humiliating musicians in the middle of service and all of that kind of stuff, which I talk about in this video right here. So you should definitely head over and check it out right now.